So thank you for joining today's presentation, How to Efficiently Protect Client Data Insights for MSPs. My name is Dakota. I'm on the partner marketing team here at JumpCloud. I'm very happy to be moderating today's presentation. So before we get started, just a quick look at the agenda. There we go. So we're going to start with a couple of housekeeping items. So basically, at any time, please throw in any questions you have in the questions panel. We have time allotted at the end for Q&A. But as we're going through today's presentation, as thoughts pop into your mind, please throw them in, and we'll be sure to get to them. Any that are kind of one-off or longer explanation, we'll definitely follow up after the webinar and get you pointed in the right direction with some context, either at Egnyte or at JumpCloud that can help answer your question. And then any that we don't get to, just because time doesn't allow it, we'll definitely follow up afterwards as well. Also, there will be a brief survey at the end of today's presentation. If you don't mind filling it out, let us know how we did, any questions we missed. Always want to improve our webinars. They're for you, so hopefully, you can let us know what we can do to improve on the next one to make sure, you're getting the most out of the presentation. So next, we're going to get off into introductions, who our panel is today, and then kind of get into the meat of the discussion. So start with the discussion, and then talking about things is great, but showing them is even better. So we're going to get into a quick demo of each platform, showing what we talk about today in practice. And then, as I mentioned, wrap up with Q&A at the end. All right, so to begin, who our panel is. So we have Rob and Brian, both from JumpCloud and Egnyte here. So Rob, do you want to give a quick introduction to everybody here?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Rob McGrath. I'm a product manager here at JumpCloud. I work primarily with the MSP product team. So I get to work with our very talented engineers to help make our multi-tenant portal and really make a product that's awesome for MSPs. I actually come from the MSP background, so I used to be a technician, and I also worked for another vendor that was very MSP focused. So my brain's very wired to both as the admin and also the guy trying to make you guys successful on this side of things. So I'm very excited to be here to talk to you guys today about the strength of products like JumpCloud and Egnyte.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Brian?
Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you all. Brian Harmon. I'm with Egnyte. Been with Egnyte almost about 6 years. Most of that time was spent in our direct sales team, both as kind of an enterprise architect, sales leader, or sales engineering leader, I should say. And then last year, decided to, I can do the LeBron James quote, I live in Ohio, so take my talents to the MSP team and really concentrate on kind of a subset of what we do in that world, but let's make it different. We all know if you're a partner, part of a partner, work through a partner, their worlds are drastically different than direct selling motions. And so we've put a huge effort at Egnyte over the past year and a half of really concentrating on building a better program, working with more security conscious vendors and building out an ecosystem, not just in our direct world, but obviously with our partners as well, to say, hey, if you cherry pick these 5 things that you use in your security posture, you want to move to an MSSP, whatever the case may be, that we're part of those offerings and follow that same mindset of, security is not an option. So really entrenched in our DNA, and glad to be here.
Perfect, thank you. And very timely LeBron quote with that one too. So to get started into the discussion, so why visibility across your entire client base? It's critical, right? So I guess looking for your opinions on why visibility is critical, and then what can that look like in practice? So what can MSPs on the line do today to sort of gain that additional visibility into their entire ecosystem, not just client by client? I don't know who wants to take it first. We'll name drop. So Rob, do you want to take this one first?
Sure, why not? So I would say there's never been a time it's more important to have visibility across your entire client base, especially as an MSP. Just by your very nature, you are spread across a wide array of platforms, a very wide array of tools that you use, and over time, generally, you've probably tried to consolidate that under a single umbrella or as close to a single umbrella as possible. And really, with JumpCloud, we've been trying to build a product to really kind of augment that, and really so that we're trying to be, you have the traditional kind of scenarios with like on-prem and the very many vendors that you've used in the past to augment those environments. We're working to play nicely with all of that. So really have a platform, especially with our multi-tenant portal, to let you quickly and easily manage your customer base and set up tools like SSO, or device management, or even now with our newer password manager product, all of those things being under a single umbrella, there's never been a more important time to do so, because it's not like hackers and the bad guys out there in the world are going to sleep, letting you guys kind of like consolidate and get everything in order. Like, they are very much looking for every opening possible. So the wider spread, and obviously you want to grow as a business, but also there's the intrinsic threat of growing means you also have a larger attack surface. So we're very much in the business of trying to help you consolidate that, minimize that attack surface, and secure both your devices and your users in ways that simply weren't possible really even a decade ago. So, and also, you didn't really need to worry about it a decade ago. There was as many nonstop barrages of people and machines out there trying to get into your system. So it's a very dangerous world out there, and being able to see it across your entire client base is not only a luxury now, it's a necessity. It's a very important aspect of being in a modern MSP.
Yeah, can't agree more, right? Like, and that's the similar posture as what we're taking. And in our world, if you guys don't know what Egnyte's foundation was and what Egnyte does, it really started as a collaboration platform for unstructured files, right? I need to basically forklift what I have in on-prem servers and put file servers and put them up in the cloud so that I can work more efficiently, globally, et cetera, right? And the story's changed, obviously, with COVID and ransomware being headline news in the past few years, right? Like work from home securely, like those are not decoupled. And so we've evolved our product to not just be a file sync and share system, like a lot of consumer products out there. We went the other approach and said, this is an enterprise class. You can replace these things. You can, augment where needed, instead of saying that this hammer works on every single nail. It doesn't. We all know that, right? Like the right nails, let's tack them down. These other ones, let's use string to pull them together and make, just a more pleasant environment for kind of three personas: end users, right? Because if an end user has an unpleasant experience or a cumbersome experience, they're going to let everybody know. And so we there's a fine line, as you can imagine, on I have my data, I can collaborate on my data, but behind the scenes, Egnyte is also scanning and looking for the risk footprint, to use your words here, Rob, looking for that risk footprint or threat footprint around the data itself. What's in it? Who has access to it? What are they doing with it? Are they oversharing it, right? Like, just pull all of that information together so people can make educated decisions. And that's just one Egnyte customer within an MSP. If you have tens or hundreds or whatever the case may be, feeding that information into SOARs and SIMs and XDRs, right? Like somewhere better that can aggregate this information and you're part of the ecosystem instead of trying to combat the ecosystem. Because like you said, nowadays, that's not the modern way that software works together. So.
Awesome, great. So moving on from that too, like kind of adding to it. So onboarding, right? Everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to get new clients. So new clients can pose another problem. So how do you automate onboarding and give users the right level of permissions right from the start? And then obviously group-based access, make it easy for everybody once you're not going to upload one at a time most of the time when you get a new client. So, how do you aggregate, that group policy across the board there?
Is that for me?
Yeah, you know what? Let's reverse it.
Flip it around. Got the Uno card. Yeah, no, this is kind of our mantra. Data is data. If no humans had access to said data, you're probably pretty safe, right? But we want them to be collaborative. We want them to work internally with folks and externally. And a lot of times people will change departments or go to another area, and the entitlement and the permissions and it starts at onboarding, but all of those things downstream over the course of months and years that they're employed can get really ugly. So you guys will see a little bit of this in the demo. We kind of took a crowdsourced approach to this to say, in a larger shop, we hope it's correct, right? Like if an MSP is handling the IT and IS for their clients and customers, great. Like they're very well suited to do it, but things happen, people move, they don't tell people, right? Like just now all of a sudden this person is in 10 different groups in their old job, their new job, and 2 jobs ago, right? Like that's risk. That's the definition of risk. So how do we crowdsource that to say, I'm in IT, I want to make sure that the onboarding experience is very light and no touch, essentially, right? Like they get it, they log in, they have a URL, they're ready to go. And it's the same password for 10, 20, 50 other applications within through JumpCloud. So now, now that they're in, making sure they're in the right groups and using skim provisioning to push down into Egnyte to say, these are the groups that they belong to. And those groups are already scattered in the folder tree to say, you're in HR, you have access to the HR folders, you have generic folders, you have XYZ. So making sure that that stays on top of things. There's a part of our package that looks for it, right? It says, hey, you know what? Probably the person who heads up the HR department is the best person to review these on a monthly, quarterly basis to say this is right or this is not right. And again, we got a lot of strange looks when we started going this route, but it's what people do anyway. IT staff says, I ran this report. All right, let me go talk to HR, right? Are these the right people? Like, they're doing it, and it's extra steps and it takes a long time. And a lot of people do it between Christmas and New Year's, right? So it's a really crappy effort in the first place. So kind of automating those things and making onboarding to deprovisioning very seamless for end users and making IT and InfoSec happy at the same time. It's pretty nice. It's a very compelling argument as to the value of our product versus building a whole bunch of things together to make the equivalent. And obviously, in the case of MSPs, the margins are adequate as well to say we are not building a bunch of things and making sure it all works together, because that takes FTE man hours to do it, build it, and maintain it. Let's lower the total cost of ownership, which, you know, in a strange aspect, obviously inflates the margins that come with said solutions.
Very nice, very well put. So I would definitely add on to that. So very much when it comes to just automating the onboarding, we're all about that at JumpCloud. Mainly, we have a huge array of integrations that we work with, especially like, for instance, like we have a lot of in-depth integrations with HRIS systems out there. A lot of times, this is the difficult part, is when a user is their status has changed from, you know, active to terminated or inactive or whatever you need to do. If they're on PTO or an extended leave or whatever, you need to like block that access. The last thing you want to do is go to a million different portals to deactivate an account, or God help you if a person had like there's been a breach and you have to figure out where in the world it happened and you have to lock that down very quickly. Doing that across several platforms can be extremely painful, and yeah, and you're guaranteed, especially if you're dealing with humans, there's going to be something that's missed. So we very much are both focused on really helping you as an IT admin and as an MSP control the identity and also control the devices of that user. And with that, and in JumpCloud, them being one and of the same, basically where you can lock down a user's devices by locking down their identity. And that will, just by the very nature of using things like single sign-on, and for also, if something's not compatible with single sign-on, you know, leveraging something like our password manager to have shared those credentials, to lock that down and to control that, and make it so revoking access to their JumpCloud account can also revoke access to passwords that they were given access to, even if it wasn't managed by single sign-on or their accounts weren't provisioned by SCIM or anything else. This way to really kind of lock that, like remove all the several extra steps needed to get there. But also on the flip side, to enable a new hire, them not have to go around and handle all those dreaded activation emails. So they first sign in, you have the tons of emails like, oh, go activate your Zoom account, go activate your Office account, go activate your Slack account. Those millions of emails out there that they receive on that day one, there's nothing more empowering than to have a single username and password protected by MFA and the various factors around that. You can add conditional access if you really want them to be connected to a VPN or Radius for their Wi-Fi. And at JumpCloud, we help you get to that point where you can give users the exact access they need at the exact right time, in the exact right place to get their jobs done without all the extra steps from day one. Like it's not this jarring experience of, you know, you're a new user and a new job. It could be overwhelming sometimes, and we really work to kind of help you as the MSP look really good, because you could just hand them their new username and password, and boom, they have access to all their tools. So.
Yeah, we jokingly say it's going to be a sea level at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning before they go to their kids' swim meet, right? Like it's going to break that, and everybody panics, and nobody wants to spend their early Sunday morning taking care of that stuff. Well,
oh yeah.
Awesome. So I know we're going to get into a demo shortly, but at a high level, since we talked about this a little bit, how can you leverage JumpCloud and Egnyte to manage that data access? And then also some additional security protocols across the entire portfolio. So like we mentioned, not just one client at a time, but potentially across, you know, your entire client base. So Rob, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. So with JumpCloud, obviously, so when it comes to managing this across your tenants, we have that built out in our multi-tenant portal where you can quickly dive into the individual orgs, as opposed to having to have that global admin account that you log in, log out, or use several incognito windows to switch between clients. It's one big portal that you can get into. So it's a lot easier of an experience that way, but also to leverage something with like JumpCloud alongside other services like Egnyte, which they're doing things that we don't do. We don't do the file sharing aspect of all that. We really help you be able to set that up for single sign-on. The users are provisioned via SCIM, so that you add them to a user group in JumpCloud, they are added to that respective user group in Egnyte, and that way you can handle the permissions and all the granular stuff on the Egnyte side. But the linchpin would be the JumpCloud identity, where you can enable or disable that at will and really use that as a launching board. And then again, that works into any other service you decide to tie into basically our open directory platform, where we try to play nicely with anything you throw at us. So really, that's how I would recommend we use, JumpCloud and something like Egnyte.
Perfect. And Brian?
Yeah, I think we're yin and yang here, right, on the where we fit in a security posture. A lot of people see us now. 10 years ago, this was not the case, but they see data and email as the two largest threats to a company, right? Like getting access to it, provisioning it, keeping it locked down in certain cases, but not so locked down that people can't do their job. And then they start to introduce shadow IT or rogue IT, right? Like sometimes it's a very complex puzzle to make sure that that's happening properly. Our approach is pretty straightforward, right? Like when we built the product, we said the first thing we need to do is make this enterprise level. So it's got to have permissions. It's got to have granular permissions across folders. You don't just magically have an account in it. Way back in the day, it was like you go to AD, you create it, add it in, right? Like there was a bunch of steps. That's obviously much smoother now with products like JumpCloud to make sure the onboarding and the day one experience is great. But the data is still there, right? People still have access to the data. On the opposite side of that coin, we do have things that look and classify the content, right? So now if you know that there's credit cards in certain files, you can treat them differently. We're not a DLP engine, but you can do some light DLP with it. Like if you find credit cards, don't allow links to be shared from that. Don't allow it on a mobile device. Don't allow XYZ, right? So making sure that we're doing our part. We're very good at the classification of this content and understanding around the behavior patterns, because we audit our stuff to the nth degree, right? But what about like that's a unicorn or a fairy tale to say everybody has all their data in Egnyte. It doesn't exist. It'd be awesome, but it doesn't exist. So the realities are you have a Microsoft ecosystem or you have a Google ecosystem, and then you use certain parts of your standard business license, E3, E5, whatever you might have to justify, all right, now I have a very large security posture. And most of the time people start to get into the panic zone of like, okay, I can't run all 30 products, right? Like that's impossible. Or I'm gonna have to hire them, and there's not a lot of them, they're not infinite, and they cost a lot of money, right? Especially if you're trying to move your business and your book of business from a smaller MSP to a medium-sized MSP or medium to large, right? Like, so just taking that day-to-day of really focusing and looking at this and the threat footprint and kind of automating it into SIMs and XDRs and things like that in conjunction with things from JumpCloud and things from your radiuses and VPNs and whatever else you might have in your security posture, so that there's the full picture. Now you have a lot less of those false positives that equate to, whoops, we disabled the CEO on a Sunday morning and now he's livid, right? Like most of the time they should accept that that's a better way to do things versus letting it go and finding out your ID was compromised and now somebody else is doing all the things that it looks like you're doing. The law doesn't care sometimes. So, really concentrating on the data and the governance and the security around that data it's in our DNA, right? Like we've done it for a long time, really at the audit and reporting level. In the past 4 or 5 years, we've really switched into the more proactive mode. Here's a heads up. And a lot of smaller MSPs really love it because it's kind of educating them to be more security expertise than just, having somebody else do it, or a partner of partner to handle it as an MSSP and things like that. So it's been in COVID again, right? Like a very popular method to kind of right size their business. And that's something that I use a lot because we're not going to displace Microsoft. That's not reality, right? Like nobody can do that. Maybe Google, that's about the only one that's going to be effective in doing that, but you're just moving your pain to another thing that has a different kind of pain that you're going to discover very shortly. So we want to be agnostic in the security posture. And to that extent, even the larger ecosystem of our 100, 200 integrations with various products that people use every day. And that can be industry specific, AEC, life sciences, fintech, right? Like we cover a lot of use cases. And sometimes that's a little nebulous when you start to have conversations around Egnyte and somebody's not in that world. They're a 10-person company. We're trying to build better security for them. All right, are you doing this boutique style? Or are you doing it, ad hoc? How are you doing this? And a lot of times it's nice to have that co-education between what our partners need and what they're trying to evolve to. At the same time, they're getting better, more secure, less time spent with eyes on glass and doing, traditional knock and sock type things. Now let's automate it and just be better all around.
Perfect. Appreciate that. So I think moment everyone's been waiting for. We talked about it, so let's see it. So we're going to give us some time to do some different screen shares here, but as we're working on getting everyone shared, feel free to throw in questions. So I see some come in, but as we finish up the discussion, as we go through the demo, please feel free to throw in any questions you have. And like I mentioned, we have a lot of time at the end, so we want to make sure that any questions you have, we try to make sure that we have enough questions in there to make sure we're answering anything anyone has. And like I mentioned, any specifics that now might not be the best time, we'll definitely follow up with you afterwards. So no, Rob is working on sharing a screen as we speak. Perfect.
Yeah, their share screen logo is way different from other ones. That always scares me. But but cool. So this is the JumpCloud multi-tenant portal. This is kind of really the hub for really getting your job done as an MSP with JumpCloud. And as you can see, this dashboard has nice visibility across them, so you can quickly and easily see some important alerts that will come from the JumpCloud platform, all bubbled up to the top. So here I'm going to go into my demo organization. Just like I had said before, we don't have to switch between several different incognito windows, or God help you trying to have to clear out your cache to make sure your password is actually logged out, or you're actually logged out to get into different tenants looking at you, Microsoft CSP portal. Definitely some bad fun experiences in the past with that myself. But yeah, so I'm in this organization, and I am now looking at ways to lock down my access for my users or protect them from doing the wrong things at the wrong times. So obviously, the JumpCloud platform has a lot of different options, including, we had discussed radius. So if you're looking to use like JumpCloud to leverage against for like Wi-Fi connectivity or even your VPNs, you can use that as well, which is going to be one of the many ways you can help protect your users and the data they're accessing by making sure they're actually on the right network at the right time and making sure that they have only the access that they needed with that. But in this case, for instance, like I can even set up with all this, I'm going to show this ahead of time, the single sign-on aspect, because you can add a whole host of conditional access policies in this, and you can aim them specifically at a particular single sign-on app. So for instance, in this case, like I have Egnyte already configured on this, I can lock it down and I can make sure I have it only selected for my Egnyte one, which I'll have to search through that. I have all single sign-on for all users. I can add conditions like, for instance, they have to use it with a device that has a specific certificate installed on them. It has, this is very helpful in particular when it comes to like the world of like COVID, where people are used to using kind of whatever device they want to use, which as an IT admin is probably one of the scariest things on the planet, because their kids are using it to get free Roblox random downloads, and of course they can download all the YouTube videos for free. There's never anything out there that's going to do anything bad to your computers. And yeah, they have suddenly all of a sudden their passwords are changed and they don't have to log in their emails. You can also enforce things like disk encryption, like if this can only work on a device that's encrypted, can lock it down by IP address or even geolocation, which is extremely helpful. You don't want anybody randomly logging in from the middle of like Bulgaria. If you're in the middle of Ohio, that's a little suspicious typically. So that kind of lockdown could be applied directly to single sign-on. And in here, I have my Egnyte configured specifically for these particular orgs. I can also make sure I have, I've already configured all this, but I can specifically aim this at one particular group. In this case, is my file share group. So moving forward, any users that I decide to add to this group will be added to this, and they'll have access. So for instance, I'm currently logged in as John Edo. I have no access whatsoever, brand new user, day one. And I said, oh, I must have missed that part. I'm going to go ahead and activate this user. Now, any kind of setup or configuration I've aimed at this single sign-on application will now be applied as well. So in this case, I'm a pretty lax admin. I wanted to make sure that this guy can come in here and access the stuff he need to get in there. Now this is actually available. You can click in and log in, and I've actually been provisioned on the Egnyte side of everything, just like that. It was not some long process. I didn't have to activate anything, come in, set up passwords, do all the jazz of getting in. I can just sign in on day one and get into my application just as needed, before that. Now, this is obviously the user side of things. This can also, when we came to the devices, this would be very helpful to be able to control the devices for this user. In this case, I don't have any random virtual machines attached to this, but you can configure devices, either Windows, Mac, Linux. We play nicely with all of them. They can install this agent, and you can also take that device and start applying the important policies you need for that as well. So while Egnyte, they have the policies around that, they'll be protecting your data. We're making their job a lot easier as well by making sure that the device itself is also locked down, and you have the proper policies in place that help you meet your compliance goals, that help you really just lock down and protect your environment, your customer environments, exactly as you expect to in the year 2023. Almost at 2022. We're only a month in there, and it's still kind of stuck in there, but that's okay. We're all mentally still in 2020, so it doesn't matter. But all that to say, this is really where the kind of like the rubber meets the road, where we really empower you as an MSP to do whatever you would like to do with the devices that you need to get done. And then again, this with just like Egnyte, we have other applications as well, so their portal won't necessarily be this bare. They can come in and see a dozen different applications, and they can access their Egnyte just as easily. They can access their Zoom, anything else, and they're all using this on a device. It's protected and locked down according to your strict standards, and everybody kind of has that uniform experience, which that's probably one of the most important aspects, and it's kind of the unsung hero, I guess, of the user experience, is not having to have 15 different bookmarks like at your day one. I don't know if I'm sure you guys have experienced that, where you've had to frantically share all the links to a new employee about what the things they are supposed to log into on that first day, and then you just have to really hope that they bookmark them later on. But at the end of the day, this is nice to be able to hand them a portal where they can access all the SaaS products that you manage for your customers, and you can even provision. For instance, if I want to make sure that I have these the right apps installed, you can provision any number of apps directly from the command line. You can even push scripts right up front, and we have a robust policy management system in there to make sure that you have the different aspects of your device locked down, controlled exactly as you see. So with that, we really just want to help you and empower the admin to get their job done much more efficiently, much more quickly. And if at the end of the day I get to this point where Johnny Doe now leaves this company, I can remove him, or he just changes roles. He no longer needs access to this. I can click this, and now his access to Egnyte has been revoked, and he no longer exists. So very much just as easily, provided, and so just as easily removed. And that's really kind of our ultimate mantra, is just help you as an admin is to control the identity and also control the devices for these users to help them get their jobs done and also keep your customers secure. So with that, I know that's like the lead up to the intro of the story of the Egnyte side, because I know with the Egnyte portal, it's a whole nother, now that user exists. And can I hand off to you, Brian?
Yeah. You want to switch presenters? Yeah, and I like the story start, right? Because especially the onboarding, I've read quite a few articles in the past couple of months of people leaving companies 1 week in because their onboarding experience is just garbage, and that sucks, right? Especially if you're an end user and you're starting and you're working remotely and you don't meet employees necessarily on the first week you're there. It's just that's a double whammy sometimes. So having the admin portal, is my screen showing, by the way?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. Making sure that the experience starts here, and like you said, these are you're on this team, you're in this department, these are the things you should have access to, and parameters and controls and geolocation, those types of things. We hear that quite a bit, right? And people try to lump everything into our platform to say, oh, well, you can do DLP and you can do CASB and you can do 300 things, and it's like, well, we don't, right? We're very good at 2 or 3 things, and so we stick with that. And because if we try to do too much, it's not going to work, right? It's going to get lost in a myriad of other things that are not valuable and beneficial, and then the end user experience sucks. The admins that own it hate it, right? Like there's a quagmire that you don't want to get into. So we took the opposite approach, make end users happy. And that really starts, I'm going to kind of come back to this in a second. That really starts with our web UI, our mobile devices, integrations, our drive letter experience if you're using a Windows machine, or Mac Finder experience if you're using a Mac, obviously, to say, hey, you know what, you came from a world where you're doing things, right? And you want to just get to your files and double click on them and open them and launch, right? Like this is all permissioned in our cloud. And no matter what endpoint you're using, you have the same permissions. And it's all centralized management from the perspective of the admin, or whether that's the MSP as a tech, or you co-own it with your clients, or you give them the keys to the kingdom, that's up to you. But it's very lightweight. It's very NTFS-like to say, hey, you know, somebody should have access to a specific project. We'll just pick this one. There's a bunch of things in here, right? Like, let's look at who has access to what. So this team, and again, you know, the best of breed, what you want to do is make sure you're not doing individual permissions like Betty is in here, but you want to do team level permissions or group permissioning, so that you can quickly swap people in and out of their responsibilities and not have to come back and massage a whole bunch of permissions as a result. Again, I said NTFS-like. Something unique in our world is we can give certain team members or groups ownership of that content. So if you're the head of HR, there's really no reason you can't own this content and grant other people permissions downstream, because you know that content, you know the people that should be there, take them out, put them in, etc. Right? So you can delegate it without making them admins and imposing risk to other things within the ecosystem. But standard stuff, you know, complete view only or preview only through full edit, upload, download, delete. And that way we're giving the traditional look and feel of the file server experience that they may be very used to over time, but modernizing it and taking it out of AD and other places so that it's really built in here. And, you know, in my goofy little example here with the Harry Potter stuff, I have a user that has access to just part of that project, right? Like they only have access to the proposals part of it. As an admin, maybe they reach out to me, maybe they make a comment in here, right? Like there's all sorts of ways. This could be help desk tickets, whatever. But now that information needs to be updated to say, he's not just in this particular group, but he needs to be part of this other group that has access to the entire project, not just a specific folder within that project. So, you know, adding him in, like Rob kind of showed earlier, it takes seconds to say, all right, here, he's in. If we needed conditional information, we could do that. If it's multiple groups, you can select multiples and bring them in, but that is already there. So now if I go back to the, apologies here. If I go back to this project and take a look at its permissions here, we're not waiting forever, right? Like that thing now has full access at the parent project level and everything downstream from it. So if I switch back over to Mr. Potter here, kind of refresh the screen, that's it. They don't have to do anything. You know, if they were browsing, it would also refresh and give them access to this content, but you're not waiting hours, you're not flooded with help desk tickets to do just simple type things that impact the end user experience. And the opposite side of that is we want them to do the right things, blocking risk, right? We want to make sure across the org, IT, IS, end users are really concentrating on what is the right and least amount of risk that we can impose to any said content. And you know, my master folder tree here has HR and finance and engineering, you know, much like a traditional company would have their top level folders for the various departments. But we want to make sure that this is easily managed. We have APIs, we have hooks into other systems that can help us with this, you know, i.e. SCIM provisioning systems and Active Directories and, you know, everything in between. So we want to take the risk out of owning and maintaining it, because if it's difficult, like I said earlier, it just takes too much time. We also want to take the risk out of the actual content itself. So, you know, if somebody does something in their day-to-day and they're not knowing what they're doing, let's protect against malware, right? If they upload something, quarantine it, warn the admin that it happened, don't let it go anywhere. The end user can permanently delete it, but they can't put it back in place. I'm an admin here, so I obviously have some extra tidbits that I can use, but make sure you're protecting the data. And a lot of companies, the data is the number one thing that need. Data and email are the number one and number two things that make their business. It's the lifeblood of their business. So make sure you're protecting it at all costs. There's always customers that are like, my data is not important. And oftentimes I'll ask them, okay, so if somebody had carte blanche access to your file server and grabbed everything, that's not a concern to you? The story generally changes right away. The other one that comes up quite a bit is really around ransomware, right? Like there's no getting around it these days. I'm not going to get heavy in our technology, but we're an object store. So we're not like a traditional file server. We have customers with one employee and a couple gigs of space. We have companies with 20, 50,000 seats and hundreds of terabytes. We have a customer with multiple petabytes of data under management in our world. So the scale within an object store is great. There's a lot of things that come with it, like snapshots and version control and link-based sharing instead of attachments, right? Like I'm not going to go over those ad nauseum, but if something happened, you can manually come in here if you want to say, hey, I need to go back to that Sunday morning, before 5 a.m. when something happened, and start a restoral process. Mount the snapshot right from here. Once it's mounted, you can pick a single file, a folder, the whole folder tree. It's an admin only functionality, so you get to pick and choose what you want. And again, if you're doing this on a manual basis, it kind of wizards your way through it. It's very quick because the data lives and breathes in our world, just in a different segment, so that you're able to come and do this at will, and hopefully not often, right? Usually ransomware is not the big hit. It happens, but usually it's somebody screwed up. Somebody did something they can't find it, they can't recover it. This is a nice fail-safe way that's not necessarily a traditional backup to get the content, something very quick and down and dirty to do it as well. But it very similar to what a backup would look like. The other half of this, and I'm going to move pretty quick through it, is not just the collaboration of the content, but obviously you want to get this data in at some point in time. We have migration utilities that allow you to take it from on-prem systems, on-prem file servers, CIF shares, etc. We're also working on cloud to cloud. We have some of them. There's some others that have popped up recently in the past year, just making sure that we're able to get data from a CloudX into Egnyte. This is all built into the platform. But the big piece here is really around the governance and visibility into what users have access to, what they're doing, and just make more educated choices. Some of this is what I would call firefighting type information, right? Like you're alerted to the fact that something happened, you have a risk, take care of that risk immediately or as fast as possible. There's also the opposite of that is like, I don't want to go and look through 3,000 links. The system is built around links. Why would I do that? Well, you can mass delete if you need to, you can ignore, you can do a bunch of things if you need to, but that's where you start to build a better framework of how do I use a platform like this, and how do I educate my users and my IT and my InfoSec staff to just do better, right? Like ultimately it's generally less work. It's just something slightly different than they're accustomed to doing. And therefore, people don't like change. We all know this. So I'm not going to go too heavy into all of the functionality here. I'm going to kind of skip through a couple pieces. But one of the things that we've also built into this is that what I mentioned earlier, we are never a single source of content, almost never. It would be great, but people live in Microsoft ecosystems or Google ecosystems, and then they may have like archives and some other storage that's in consumer level type of solutions out there. We don't care, right? Like leave it if you want to leave it. If you want to go to on-prem systems, if you want to even go to structured content like Salesforce and databases and things like that, let us go and do what we do very well, which is finding and classifying this information so that you can do more educated decisions and figure out the better way to lower your risk footprint. So, being able to tie into the Microsoft ecosystem for OneDrive, scanning SharePoint, Exchange Online, Teams is amalgamation of all of these types of things, so it's built into it as well. But then what do I want to look for, right? Like, do I care about individual permissions? If you did a great job in your Microsoft ecosystem and you don't have individual permissions, you can turn that off so it doesn't look for that. Again, you really, even though this is SaaS software, fine tune it for not just yourselves, obviously, because you're MSPs, fine tune it for your clients. They're all going to have different needs. Some of them don't even know what they need. This can turn into great, assessment offerings or services that are not traditional sales, but more of a subscription on a quarterly basis or monthly basis or something like that to say, hey, we're going to do some like x-rays of your information. We're going to tell you where you have risk, and then we're going to help you get past that risk. You don't need to be an MSSP to do those types of things. You have a lot of ammo here to kind of educate yourself and also make life for your customers better. Outside of obviously getting the data in, clicked on the wrong bucket here. We want to look for what's in that data. You basically pick where that customer does business. If they're very global, there's lots of global locations you can select. If they're just US based or Canada or whatever the case may be, you could do that. And then it's going to return a specific set of rules that say for that jurisdiction, and in finance, you're going to have these things. And you can select, deselect whichever ones you want that are appropriate for it. You can turn them all on, you can turn one on, we don't care. You want to do the full coverage of what may impose risk in your world, and this is a great start. Obviously, people have other things, they have industry terms, they have specific competitive intelligence information that we should know about or we probably don't know about. You can build custom policies without writing regex for your clients. Just say, hey, I care about specific patterns. Maybe I care about PII. Now you don't have to figure out what PII is in all of those jurisdictions. We're doing that for you. We're saying these are the markers, we understand this. If it shows up, it's got contextual information, add this to the pile. Maybe you, outside of patterns, you have keywords, you have properties from Microsoft Office docs and PDFs, you got metadata, you got locations. This location is okay, this location is not okay. Again, you can really freeform this to make sure it's fitting what their needs are or what your needs are for them, and not a ton of white noise and not a ton of false positives. Really lower that bar so you're not inundating yourselves or other folks with useless information. One quick little demo I'll give here, and then I'll wrap up with just the other picture. Firefighting is great, but like I said, just getting better over time. There's some other pieces that this inherently does because we own the data or we have insights into that data, and we can tell you metrics and statistics and other things to kind of lower that footprint over time and get better. Since I pulled up the credit card policy here a few minutes ago. Right now I'm looking at credit card policies across multiple data sources, right? Like maybe I don't care, maybe I care about OneDrive, maybe I just care, in this case, about the Egnyte content. Even before I go and start doing an investigation, this is very valuable, right? Like, oh, I see things in an invoice folder or a contracts folder, payroll folder. Those seem like somewhat legit places where a credit card might show up. Who am I to know? But Joe's desktop, that's probably not, right? Like we don't want to have those out there. So now we're able to kind of aggregate that information to say, you know what, let me double check. What is that thing? Did it really have credit cards in it? Let's see, has the word credit card in the actual title? And then we're going to go in and we're going to see that information, right? And it's qualified. It's not just a 16-digit random set of numbers. We check against a LUNS database and some other things to make sure that this is truly legit. So again, we're cutting down those false positives. And it's very, very simple, right? Like you don't have to jump up between a bunch of tabs. There was one in here that if I needed to go actually look at it in context with everything else in that file, I could launch the file and go straight to it. Again, this is under the assumption that this is IT staff or admins that are doing this. You can obfuscate it as well. So you can assign roles to people like, hey, they can help us investigate, but I'm not going to impose more risk by showing them the actual content that we found. There's tons and tons of settings where you can kind of make it yours or make it theirs. Other locations like an invoice folder, maybe this is okay. I can just whitelist this right here. I could say, you know what, thanks for finding it. I don't care anymore. Red X to green check mark and we're done. It's not going to keep telling us, but if PII or something else showed up in this folder, obviously we'll bring that back up to the surface. And then the other one that I show is sometimes the data's in the right place. Sometimes it's okay that the data's there and we don't need a whitelist or blacklist or anything like that, but we're tying in the permissions here. Back to kind of the root of Egnyte and JumpCloud working together and the entitlement and permissions base. Now I can look at that. I can quickly go and say, all right, well, for that folder, show me what you got, right? Like, first of all, I have this little red S, whenever my demo environment loads up here, that says there is sensitive content in that location. I can get what that is, but more importantly, I see who has access, what level of access they have, who granted them that access. Like, was it an admin or do we have a rogue HR person or payroll person? You can start to stitch together this information and make better decisions, right? Like in real time, it might take me a few minutes to kind of scroll up and down. I see I have some external people. I have some people that are deactivated. Why on earth are they still in the permissions model? And they're individuals, they're not groups, right? Like I'm starting to formulate, what do I need to do to fix this? And it may not be me. It may be a data owner, like we talked about earlier, which is the head of payroll or something like that. But now I can see like, hey, you know what? Payroll recipients, that is not the right team. Payroll managers is the right team. Somebody just grabbed the wrong one. Go in, remove this permission, move on, right? And that is obviously going to get a lot of people, because there's quite a few in that payroll recipient group that now we're killing the group access to it, all of them disappear. So, you know, from alert to investigation to remediation, we want to keep you in the same place as much as possible. B, we want to make it as seamless as possible, so you're not constantly spending time in this platform to do this. And like I said earlier, if you want to take this event information and feed it into other systems that you have in your arsenal, have at it, right? Use our APIs to push them there. We have some standard APIs and integrations with like Splunk and Sumo Logic and others that we can also incorporate as needed. Some areas that I'm going to skip for now. Obviously, compliance. If you guys have customers that have high sensitivity, they're, you know, CCPA, CRPA, GDPR, like all of the acronym soup that comes with a lot of these state level, government level compliances. We have hooks to look for that, right? Like we're going to try to surface it. So if you need a subject access request on behest of your customers or yourself, very quickly can get to it. The last area I'm really going to concentrate on is how do we make things better, right? Like firefighting is great, that's awesome, but how do I use some of the other bells and whistles here to say, over time, we notice we have like all data forever. That's just not a good policy. Let's help customers get to a better place where they're retaining data that needs to be retained for certain amounts of time, purging it when it makes sense, archiving it when it makes sense, and then you start to build that around the content classification that we looked at a few moments ago, and or location and or risk score, right? Like you can go and now build to say this type of data, we have to keep it for 7 years for FinSec, SEC. This other data, whatever, we don't have to do it. And a lot of times it's the combination of your customers know their regulatory needs, but they don't have the right product, or they're paying you gobs of money sometimes and a lot of time to build something like this. And we've taken a different approach to say, you know what? I want to archive data after a certain amount of time. We'll just do quick. I want to archive just individual files or projects. That Diagon Alley one that we just did here, right? Like I want to go and say this location, since I have multiple locations, any of this criteria, right? Like in a specific location if I wanted to, or, you know, I could pick any of those policies that we talked about before. So if it has some regulatory data or credit cards or whatever the case may be, I'm just going to pick a folder to kind of move past this. So we'll say that building management folder that we've been drilling into. And at that point, after that X amount of time, where do I want to put it? Do I want to put it in a hot archive, cold archive, you know, in the same location, just in another area, right? Like now I'm able to script this out for different types of data, locations, et cetera. And then you're lowering your risk footprint by saying, doing the equivalent of putting a box, taking files, putting them in a box and putting that box in a warehouse, right? Like it doesn't need to sit in the office. It doesn't even need to sit in file cabinets anymore. And it's very circular, right? Like a lot of times people aren't ready for building said policies. So we need to nudge them, right? Let's give you heat mapped information about how many files, where they are, how many of them are duplicates. So you can start to take additional actions to say, you know what, in the that same building management folder that we had, what's eating up the most amount of space, or where are the largest files, right? And obviously it's heat mapping that the active projects are higher. Maybe this one, right? Like I don't have any retention policies, but I want to see where are duplicates. Do I want to clean those up? You know, it's a demo environment, so of course I have tons of duplicates, but you know, do I want to clean it up based on statistics over time? Policies that may already be in place that say, hey, it's not going to archive for 7 years. You know, maybe I ignore that and I say, all right, well, let's just go ahead and archive it right now, right? Like you have a lot of insights and access to do additional things that you just either had to write scripts or it's very convoluted in other ecosystems. You know, make it highly intuitive is kind of our mantra for, again, end users, for IT, and for InfoSec. So I'm going to stop there, Dakota. I know I rambled a lot. So if there's any questions or anything that came in, I think we got, what, 8 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can kick off the questions. So the first one is this recorded? So yes, this has been recorded. We'll send it out, I believe, tomorrow. We'll try to get it out earlier, but tomorrow at the latest. That way there's a recording link in there so you can share it with your team in case anyone missed it. So the next one, I believe we touched on this, but looks like someone wants a little bit more info on it. So can you revoke access to company data when someone leaves? I guess more on that is, I guess, how would you revoke it? How easy is it
to Egnyte data?
To remove access.
Yeah, it's really simple. So what Rob showed earlier, where when you deactivate a user inside of JumpCloud, they automatically no longer have access to any content in Egnyte, right? So it's truly kind of like 1 or 2 clicks to get there. Even if you suspend it and then you're like, okay, we figured out what the problem was. It wasn't really a problem. Turn it right back on, and they're right back to where they were left off. So it's extremely easy. If you need to actually purge them, like they've been fired or you have HR legal action kind of thing, as an admin in our platform, if they have a private folder with stuff, it'll promote it to you so that as an admin, you're not losing any content that they ever contributed to. It just moves it to a more secure location, more pertinent location.
Perfect. So this one, I believe, is for both. It's kind of long, so you have multi-tenancy capabilities. So if they only want some things for certain child accounts, but obviously see it at an aggregate level at the multi-tenant level. So I can push that one off to Rob first, because I think we showcased the MTP a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, multi-tenancy with the JumpCloud for MSPs product, and we also have our partner program in general. With your access to the multi-tenant portal, you can do as much or as little per customer for this. So not every customer is going to have the same level of products with you. They're not going to have the same level of support with you. So absolutely, we help you really support that and facilitate you as an MSP to use whatever tools make sense for your customers and their context. So yeah, every customer is an individual tenant. You can even onboard existing and JumpCloud customers. We can help you onboard them into your multi-tenant portal or spin them off should you ever transition them to another MSP in the area. We are very much focused on helping empower you as an MSP to get your job done.
Yeah, and similar, right? Like ours is a little different. Because an average user might have more than one, what we call an Egnyte domain, which is abc.egnyte.com, whatever the case may be. Maybe they have it for geographical dispersion, right? Like I have a European office, the data needs to stay there. The US office needs to stay in the US, easily carved up, right? Like to meet those accommodations. The other thing that we do for our resellers and MSPs is we have a partner marketplace that allows you to go in and see all of your tenants. And if you need to admin one of them, add users, add storage, whatever, a lot of times you don't even need to go into the tenancy. You can do it at the layer where you see the list of all the tenants. But you can also right click and multi-tenant administration your way in, right? And that way you're not a true account. You're an audited account that's not an end user. So you're, in a lot of cases, you're not eating up one of their licenses to do admin type work.
Perfect. We have another one about deploying with their RMM tool. So they said in particular, they're using Datto RMM. So I guess they're wondering, how easy is it to deploy via their RMM? I guess both, right? JumpCloud and Egnyte. So I don't know if Brian, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so we're within our reseller system, our partner marketplace system. One of the things that we've been lacking for, I'd say, a year plus is just API access to it. APIs for PRMs, RMMs, PSAs. It's literally in flight right now. I think our first sprint drops sometime this month to open those up so that that data can be fed in from the outside world. So it's coming. It's the short answer.
Perfect. And Rob?
I would say we definitely integrate with your PSAs out there right now. Currently, we have ConnectWise and Datto. We're working on some Synchro integrations as well, but we also have a robust API. So the worst case scenario, definitely ask us, put in a request, and we can get that on our radar for that. But yeah, we absolutely work with your PSA, both for billing and for ticketing. So yeah, we help you get your job done with your customers and not have to worry about that the dreaded manual billing process at an MSP. I was a procurement guy, so I know how that felt at my MSP. It was long days sometimes.
Yeah, nobody likes end of month reconciliation.
Oh boy.
Perfect. There are quite a few questions that are pretty specific that we'll definitely follow up afterwards. I see some very specific, so we'll definitely follow up. I know we're close on time, so I think this is probably a good spot to wrap it up here. And like I mentioned, any questions that come in now that we have already or in the post-webinar survey, we'll follow up with you individually and make sure you're pointing in the right direction and get the answers you need there. But just wanted to say thank you to Rob and Brian for hopping on today, giving us a glimpse at both the platforms and then answering questions, giving us some insight into that. And then obviously thank you everyone attending. Really appreciate it. You know, we do these for you, so if it's helpful, incredible. If not, please in the survey let us know how we can make it more helpful for the next time. So, you know, you can continue to learn and, you know, we can continue to help. So with that, just want to say thank you. Hope everyone has a great Wednesday, rest of the week, and great kickoff to February. So appreciate it and see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.